You are now listening to Vigilantes Radio, presented by the only one media group. This is the people's choice for quality interviews, celebrities and special guests. Hosted by Demetrius Dini Reynolds. Call in to join the mix at 701-801-9813. For the complete archive of episodes, visit onlyonemediagroup.com and be sure to like us on Facebook at Vigilantes Radio. We welcome all. Enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Demetrius Houdini Black Reynolds. Enjoy the show.
Hey guys, I am your host, dini-mussolini, and I just want to welcome you guys to another awesome episode of Vigilantes Radio. This is a pre-recorded show, and we still have fun on our pre-recorded shows, right? Because we have a very, very special guest with a very, very complicated last name, all right? So, but hey, people with, hard to pronounce last names are usually geniuses, right? So we'll find that out. All right, so guys, I want you to stop trying. The phone rings. The voice on the other end asks, do you have that report yet? And you answer, no, but I'm trying to get it done. Hold up, stop, rewind, run that scene again. The phone rings. The voice on the other end asks, do you have that report yet? And you answer, I'm working on it right now. You'll have it in the morning. I guarantee it. Notice any difference? In the first example, you're trying. In the second example, you're doing. Which one seems more likely to result in a completed report? Trying. Have you ever thought about that word and its implications? When you tell yourself or anyone else that you're trying, that strongly presumes the negative, that you're not actually doing anything at all. Even worse is when you are trying hard. Oh my goodness. Think about those two words, trying and hard. Not exactly confidence builders, exactly full of action. We refer to people in dire situations as leading a trying life or as going through hard times. So what does trying hard get you? Stop trying, start doing. When you think of yourself or refer to yourself as trying, the lack of commitment is glaring. So stop trying. Go beyond giving it your best shot and make the commitment to get it done. Replace trying hard with doing whatever it takes. That is my motto, fellas and ladies. Doing whatever it takes. And see how much more effective you become. Take that from me, Dini-Mussolini. That is my word, and word is bond.
You're live in the mix. Let's get this started.
Well, ladies and gents, today's episode is I wanted to say his name, but we actually titled the interview by the name of the film, Excelsius. That is the name of the film, and the name of our special guest is jaze-bordeaux. Or it could be Bordeaux or Bordeaux. I don't know. Either way, he's either from Louisiana, France, or Canada. Yeah, special type of people. And not in a bad way. Geniuses. A lot of people, a lot of geniuses come from Louisiana and Canada and France. So Hopefully, Mr. Bordeaux is one of those people. I think he is, right? He has to be. He's a filmmaker, director, a writer. All the elements of genius, right? So we are the people who have dedicated their weekdays and weeknights to music, film, news, business ventures, conspiracies, and just talk in general. From our incredible writing and promotion here on our new Facebook page. It's over at Vigilantes Radio, so I know a lot of you guys like to listen to the show and scroll on Facebook. So while you're doing that, while you're looking up Patty Mayonnaise or Petty Wop or Being Petty, you can just scroll on over to the page and hit the like button, or to our interviews and music show here on Vigilantes Radio, or our spiritual and intuitive talk on a show called Skeptics, or our brand new show called Hated It, where Mike and I review movies of all kinds and do voiceover comedy. We spend each and every day giving our maximum effort to create an exciting indie and professional community for all creative minds that coexist in this beautiful artistic world. Our special guest today, like I mentioned before, is a director, a producer. He's probably Aquaman. His name is Jaze-Bordeaux. So, hey, Jace, how are you doing, man?
Thank you very much, Dini. It's actually Bordeaux and Canadian. Good guess.
Canadian.
Yes. Yes,
nice.
Right out of Toronto, Canada.
Okay. Yeah, that's where superstars happen and superstars born.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that have come through Toronto. Some of the very famous American ones, like William Shatner. He's right out of Toronto, Canada. Mr. Captain Kirk himself. And a whole slew of names that have come out of here.
Yeah.
So very exciting times up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't forget about Drake.
Oh, that's right. He is pretty much like God up here in Toronto. There's nowhere he can go.
Wow.
And not hear about Drake or have a reference, or he's very, very, very well liked and very, very well respected in his hometown.
Nice.
For sure. Yeah. And of course there is another music icon down in the States that's from here, and it's Mr. Justin Bieber himself.
Of course. Can't forget about the Biebs.
I can't forget about him. So.
So, man, how are you feeling?
Oh, I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Like I said, exciting times, especially where I'm at. There's a lot happening here, and I know some of your callers they may not be familiar with Toronto so much, but there's a lot happening here in terms of production, music, creativity. I think we're in a little bit of a renaissance. There's so much coming out of here right now that, like I said, it's just a very exciting time to be up here.
Wow.
Co-creating with a lot of different people, a lot of talent, and just taking those next steps, right?
Definitely. Oh yeah. So, you're the producer of this new movie in development. Tell us about how the concept of Excelsis came to be.
Well, it's actually quite a funny story. We're currently working on a slate of films, actually, over the next few years. And Excelsis was never in our planning. It wasn't even in the scope of things. We actually had another film that should have been in its place, and that film was more geared towards the cryptocurrency world. And one day, the lead actress in our film is Carly Rose, and she is also the lead in a couple of other productions we have upcoming through the next few years. But oddly enough, I was actually looking at a sports calendar in my office, and in that particular month, that month of May, there was a picture of a girl, and she had some MMA gear on. And at the time, I don't know, this was maybe a year and a half ago, women's mixed martial arts was just starting to explode. Ronda Rousey was getting hot. She was getting a lot of mainstream attention. there was a lot of focus that was starting to move into that particular area. And I looked at the calendar, I looked at our lead actress, and then all of a sudden I had an idea, because I am a mixed martial arts fan, so I kind of understand the demographics of the fans that connect with the sport, and I kind of have an idea of who they are. And one of the reasons why we decided to move forward with Excelsis is because we thought it could connect with a community and a fan base that we were after, that could translate into the next, few projects that we have in development. So it was a combination of the idea was, I think it was the right story for the right time. It was a film about obviously putting women in the forefront, slightly before the Me Too movement happened. It was also looking at a sport that was on a rise, that was featuring women in these combat sports types roles that we just really, I don't believe, have seen, not in my lifetime. I can't quite think of another sport, where it was just on the rise like that in terms of popularity and the focus and the attention. And I believe we had a great story to tell at the same time. So ultimately it came down to, I thought we could create a story, create a film. We knew exactly where the market was for it. And in the process, I believe that we could actually advance two scenarios, just the overall awareness of women in mixed martial arts and also women in film. And from there, we just pretty much just decided to go with that film first, and that's how Excelsis was birthed. It was just birthed really from a picture from a sports calendar that was given to me at a sports bar.
Nice.
That simple. And all it took was basically a couple of moments, and boom, inspiration hit, and that's how it happened. And I think that's usually the case with a lot of creative projects. It doesn't take a lot. It's usually just a moment, one thought, one idea, one word, whatever it is, and boom, all of a sudden something is birthed.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you that, like, how easy is it for you to get inspired by, something like a poster?
Inspiration, I find, it usually hits in the most oddest places and the oddest times. Sometimes I get it just being in front of a water. But I believe the biggest thing I personally have had to learn over many, many, many years, because it's not that I've lacked inspired thoughts throughout the years, but I think the biggest thing that I've had to learn actually was how to distinguish between, the ideas that would be what I call iron balloons, meaning they'll just, maybe it's the wrong time or whatever the concept might be, but iron balloons in which they just can't get off the ground, and helium balloons, the ones that will actually fly. So for me, I don't think getting inspired thoughts is so much the issue for me or for most people, but I think a lot of times it's learning how to distinguish between, well, what's a good idea right now? Maybe it's a great idea, but it's just not for right now. Maybe 5 years from now it could be something, versus what's the idea that could have the most momentum right now. Right. So that's, for the most part, overall, what I've found throughout the years that I've really had to learn to distinguish between. So I call them iron balloons versus helium balloons. You can put a lot of energy into an iron balloon, and a lot of times it's just not the right time.
Yeah.
Versus something where that's a little bit more ready to go. And it was the same case with Excelsis. I looked at Excelsis and a couple of the other projects we had, and I thought Excelsis was our helium balloon right now, for the right now.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome, man. You're also the director. How long will it take? Like, is the film completely shot, or what are we waiting for?
We will. the film will be completed before the end of the year, and I'll get into that in a bit here. We did get a little bit delayed just because we had some union issues that we had to get sorted out. There's a lot of cooperative efforts that need to take place between a lot of people, different groups, organizations, and some of that was a little bit slow in the making, or the process was slow. However, a lot of people would ask me about that, say, hey, was that like frustrating? And I would tell them no, because what my team did is we took the time to literally plan the production. We've planned our shots. We're going into it. We know exactly how we're shooting the film, what angles, what equipment. We've prepared so well for it that as soon as we start production in October, we'll literally move through it, I believe, with great efficiency, like extreme efficiency, because we're so well prepared to actually go into it. So a lot of the delays that we've had, actually, I believe, have worked to our advantage, just in preparation. So when you go back to the directorial standpoint, it's a lot of, mostly what I tell people, preparation. It's just being prepared for that time. And we've actually taken the time to prepare, not just as a production, but also on the talent side. And I believe that's really what we've had to our advantage now. So some of the things people, like I said, have observed in terms of the delays we've had, I've said to them that, hey, it's really worked in our favor. Because I can't think of another production that's ever been so well prepared, to actually start shooting the film. And not just shooting it, but also everything else that revolves around it. As you've known, we've got a lot of attention for what we're doing right now, and we're very well prepared for even after production, just in terms of where the film's going to go and what it's going to do, who's going to watch it, where they are. There's a lot of other opportunities that were presented to us in terms of marketing, cross-marketing with different brands and personalities, and I believe the part that happens after we shoot the film is probably more exciting than actually shooting the film in terms of what's happening right now. We're going to have a lot of fun with that phase of things.
Right. Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Cool deal.
Yeah. So.
Did you solely choose the locations for these shots?
Well, locations is a very interesting thing because, like I said, I work with a really great team, and I have a very great director of photography. And for those that may not understand that term, that would be our technical guy who's responsible for the actual camera shots. So believe it or not, a lot of times there are locations. We have a location scout who goes out and finds locations based on what's written in the screenplay. And typically the location scout knows how to weed out bad locations. However, for myself, I'm usually very involved in these things, and I'll look at all the options presented to me, but I'll also find my own options. Yeah. And what we'll have to do is then go and test these locations and see if it actually would work. Sometimes from the visible eyes, I've had locations that look like they would work, and we'll go and do camera tests and realize that the cost to go there in terms of the amount of lighting that we need to bring in and what we would have to do is not worth it. So, yeah, and so we've carefully gone through all of the locations that we will be shooting at just to make sure that they'll be conducive to what we're trying to do and how we're telling the story on camera in terms of the aesthetics, the colors, everything else that goes along with that. So yeah, I'm definitely involved in all of the locations that we're using. Obviously, I pretty much have to approve all of them. However, there have been a lot of locations that I've looked at that I thought would be great for some of the scenes that we're doing, but for whatever reason, maybe getting permits, or maybe it's just going to cost too much to bring crews and equipment there, that we had to pass on just because it wasn't feasible from a budget standpoint.
Gotcha.
You know, so little details that, it's a great question you asked me, but yeah, just very little details nobody ever really thinks about. But very much important details involved in the filmmaking process, right? We've had locations that literally, you know, I was very disappointed we couldn't use just because the feedback from the sound, just the audio, we knew we weren't going to capture great audio. You know, and it would have just been too expensive to try to clean up the audio. I mean, we looked at it from every angle that we could look at, but we knew at the end of the day we were going to end up with audio problems. So it was a location that we couldn't use. But like I said, these are just little details that, you know, go into the entire planning aspect of, you know, creating these projects, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think the average person would just even, you know, sit down and consider the amount of details that goes into scenes and permits and sound checks and all of that. Like, I mean, I don't even have any idea, like, the amount of things you have to think about.
Well, and a lot of times when you have a production, because, you know, these things do cost money, and you know, you want to make sure you get it right as much as you can the first time, because often it costs more to come back and try to fix it than having solved the problem the first time. So, you know, for me, I definitely want to avoid as much as possible having to come back and maybe redo a scene or try to recapture an audio, or because these are all the things that would make projects run over budget, and it's usually not a good thing when you're running over budget. You know, a lot of people tend to get upset about that, right?
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, very little details, and it's a question I haven't heard before, but it's definitely probably one of the most important questions I think someone could ask in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, man, because we have a lot of, like, aspiring writers and directors, producers, artists, and sometimes they want to know, like, the inner mechanics. Like, I mean, I know there's school and everything, but sometimes you got to hear it from a person who's actually doing it.
Yeah, and you know, my concept is you can learn it from a book, you can watch the video, you can do all of those things. The assimilation of knowledge, I think, is important. But when you can actually apply it anyhow, any way whatsoever, I believe that's where you find the difference between knowing something and really knowing something. You know what I mean? It's one thing to know it in theory or to have heard about it or to listen. It's one thing to have applied it and have a full understanding of it. So me personally, I know that I typically would have to apply things in order to get to the point where I have a thorough and full understanding of exactly what the thing was that I learned or had assimilated, and so forth and so forth. So.
Right. Sure. Yeah. So what inspires the scenes that you create as a writer?
Well, you know, like if we look at Excelsius for the most part, one of the main cores or function of the story is a lot of people I see every day or interact with. There's a very consistent thing that I see, and I see that I think some of our biggest opponents is ourselves. When I talk to people, I tell them all the time, I said, hey, look, if somebody else talked to you the way you talk to you, you would be in a fight. It wouldn't be acceptable. You know what I mean? People would be quick to defend themselves. But yet, in the mind, throughout the day, I believe all of us to some degree, some people to a higher degree and some people to a lesser degree, we're like constantly battling ourselves. There's that voice that just keeps beating down the psyche. Mm-hmm. And really what you want to do, because you're in a battle with yourself, is to defeat that voice. Right. So in Excelsius, I really wanted to, and we've seen it before in so many other ways, and people have different ways to tell their stories. But what I really wanted to do was to kind of highlight the fact that every day we're in this huge battle with ourselves. Yeah. And if you really want to get to where you want to go or get what you want, you've got to defeat yourself. So largely our storytelling in Excelsius was really inspired by that fundamental idea. So regardless of what you're seeing in the scenes or where it's going, the core, at its core, that was the inspiration behind that film. It's represented in a lot of different ways, but I believe ultimately when you get to the end of the movie, people are going to understand exactly what we were trying to portray or put out there in the film. And it's not just even in the storytelling, it's in the music as well. Like the music is going to be scored specifically to try to communicate that very thing, that the battle is with ourselves. If you can beat yourself, you'll get to wherever you got to go and do whatever you want to do. I don't believe any one particular person stands in our way. I think we're the only ones that are actually standing in our own way. And ultimately, like I said, that's what was inspiring a lot of the writing throughout Excelsius.
Yes, sir. I got to agree with that. I don't know, it may sound, I don't know. I'll just ask you anyway. What does it feel like seeing your ideas come to life through others' acting and art skills?
That's a great question, actually. And I remember the first time, many, many years ago, when I first started producing some films. We did a short film, and there was a screenplay that I had co-written, and I had never thought about this question that you had asked me until we did a table read. And all of a sudden I heard the actors actually speaking the very words that we had written on paper. And in that moment, it just felt like, wait a minute, it's like you almost gave birth to something. And I'm not going to say that I can relate to a woman who's just given birth to a little baby, but I can somewhat equate it to that because it just felt like you just gave birth to something. You just breathed life into something that just appeared into the world. And it's like, all of a sudden there was nothing. This didn't exist before. You put it together, and then now there's something. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like some type of creative effort. It was just more like a creation that just came to life, literally. And that's the best way I could describe it, as a woman giving birth. However, I'm not going to say that I can relate to that experience fully, obviously, right?
Yeah.
You know, but it's the best I can do in trying to create that parallel. So if you can imagine, in one moment you have nothing, and let's say you drew a picture on a piece of paper, and in the next moment that image jumped out of the paper and it was real, that's what it was like. You know, or that's what it's like at times. It's a little surreal, but that's the feeling behind it.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So you have a terrific supporting cast, and you worked with several of these people occasionally. Catherine Aboya, Nabel Daly, if I say that correctly, Ava Blackwell, Ryan Graham, Alex Cruz, Carly Rose, Allie Williams, to Rocco Farella. Who selected the cast, and how is it working with them?
Well, I'm definitely involved, like I said, in every aspect of the film. I'm hands-on in everything, and we are still actually casting right now still.
Mm.
And the interesting thing I'll tell you about a couple of the main lead cast, as in Carly Rose and Ava Blackwell, is that they actually do have combat sport experience. And Ava Blackwell, for example, she is 10 years in MMA training. A lot of accolades, a lot of accomplishments. She could legitimately get into the octagon and beat people up, and you would look at her and say, huh? Wow, okay, I would have never saw that one. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with one of our other main leads, Carly Rose, who's had a lot of boxing training, actually. Wow. She could get into the ring and throw a right hand, and you wouldn't have even known that she was capable of that just by looking at her, which is great because it kind of goes back to that whole concept of you can never really judge a book by its cover, right?
You're right.
There's so much more to, I think, everybody than what meets the eye, and there's so much more depth, so one has to always be careful in assessing people. So typically with people, and especially with actors and actresses, I usually try to refrain from coming into any type of conclusion. And as a result, what happens is I'm always surprised by the next thing they pull out of their hat, or, oh, by the way, I speak 4 other languages, It's just, you mentioned Catherine Amboya there, and she just came off of a film that came out last year with Downsizing. I think was out in theaters with Matt Damon, and that's an actress there that has so much range that could literally be anybody in any dialect and a lot of different languages. So when it comes to talent, I usually stay very open-minded, and it's, like I said, I always end up being surprised because it's always like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I have this ability, and I can also do this. So I have a really fun time, especially when we're casting, because it's a great way to just discover creativity in people, and just seeing the range that's out there. And there's so much talent as we've been casting throughout Toronto in this city that it's just, sometimes mind-boggling to me how much talent there is here. Yeah. And but it's been incredible just going through that process, and we're still going through it right now, preparing for the fall. So.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Are there any funny co-worker stories? Well, hold on. You did say that you guys were still casting, right?
Yeah, we're still casting, and we're still going through the motions in the process. So at the moment, some of the cast are still getting familiar with each other in terms of some of the work style and just preparation and all of those things. But we'll talk again in a few months, and I can maybe tell you some odd things that went down while we were shooting, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In that regard.
Yeah. So when I hear you say, you guys are still casting, what I hear is there's still opportunities for maybe some of you people out there in Toronto or people in New York who want to cross the border, or maybe even hope for Dini, to be in this film, right? That's what I hear.
There is still a lot of opportunity, right? And you know what? There's going to be a lot of opportunity right even till the time we start shooting. There's always adjustments. There's always this. There's always an addition. We need somebody. There's opportunity everywhere, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a matter of, my thing is always just being prepared for opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to make an appearance, let me know when you're in Toronto. We'll make something happen, right?
Definitely. All right. Sounds good. So, well, I know it's kind of a premature question. I think you said you may want to come back and answer it, but Any funny coworker stories so far?
So far.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I said, we've been planning and prepping for, just a little while. And basically, in this film, it's a female mixed martial arts film, and we have a lot of attention to the detail in the fight scenes because they're not just going to be fight scenes. They're designed to continue the story of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And our main actress, Carly Rose, has been asking to do her own stunts for, since we started the project. And I basically, when one of the main actresses or actors says that to a producer, you pretty much cringe because you're like, well, yeah. I don't know about this. There could be, even though typically the stunts are very well coordinated, there's the people that are involved, they're all certified professionals, and very likely nothing would happen because it's very safe, it's very protected. However, there's still always a risk, right? Mm-hmm. And you just don't know sometimes, and on the producer side, you just don't necessarily want to take the risk. So basically, for the past 12 months, I've said to her, it's not happening. It's not going to happen. We already have your stunt double. It's not going to go down. It's not going to happen. No, we can't risk it. Can't put you in there. And finally, what ultimately happened when we were doing our camera tests and running through how we're going to be shooting these fight scenes and sequences, and we pretty much went through the entire sequences. We realized that we did actually need to have her incorporated into it. Mm-hmm. So I had to actually call her in a very, very low voice and say to her, okay, well, I know you've been asking, and unfortunately I'm going to have to say yes. And she got pretty stoked about it, and she's actually been preparing for it ever since, actually. So I suppose on her side, she got a good chuckle out of that, and on my side, I'm still kind of frowning about it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what about challenges? Everything just can't be PG and flow nice. I mean, that's the way we want it, but what kind of challenges do you face?
Well, listen, I'm going to tell you this. Typically when I start something, I'm committed to seeing it through, regardless of what. I'm, committed to it, and we're going to get it done however way we're going to get it done, which is why before I decide to do something, I carefully try to weigh it out in the sense that, is it the right time? Is it the right project? Is this an iron balloon or is it a helium balloon? So I take that process very seriously because I know when I start, I'm going to stay committed and I will see it through to the end. So yes, as with everything, we've had challenges in terms of a lot of delays on the project. And mostly because of factors that were outside of our control. Like I said, there's a lot of, in any particular film, there's so many moving parts on it. I can tell you right now, by the time we're done, our cast and crew number is probably going to be at 83 people. And total cast and crew. There's other organizations involved, like unions. There's other companies that are involved. There's financing that's involved. There's distribution that's involved. And it's one huge collaborative effort. So whenever you have moving parts like that, it's, like I said, it's almost given that, you're going to run into some delays because you're waiting on parties and all the normal stuff that goes on. So in this one, we've been challenged with mostly delays. And on our side, we're ready to go, but then you're waiting on, like I said, other organizations, contracts, permits. You're waiting on distribution. I mean, there's so many other factors. But like I told you in the beginning, we just basically, or in my mind, I took that as an opportunity to better prepare ourselves. You know, we've gone through maybe 10 different versions of the screenplay. We've totally prepared for the style of shooting that we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Just the story we're going to tell in terms of our cinematography, the story we're going to tell in our music score. So people can look at them as delays, but I just looked at it more as an opportunity to prepare further, so we can create the best possible film that we could with the story that we have. You know, so my perspective might be a little bit different on what challenges represent and don't particularly represent. Whenever we're faced with one, I'm always looking at, okay, well, what else can we get done right now, or what should we be doing right now while we have this time to do it?
Right.
You know, because we're going to move forward no matter what. So in this moment, what else is there that we need to be paying attention to while this other issue gets resolved? You know, or we wait through this delay. You know where I'm going with this?
Yes, sir.
And that's part of, you know, I think what it means to push through. So that's why I said, so sometimes in those scenarios, I take a different perspective. You know, I don't necessarily look at it as a bad thing or a negative thing. I just look at it more, there's an opportunity to achieve something else in this moment as it relates to this project while whatever else is getting handled. You know?
Nice. Yeah.
But, you know, so.
Jaze, is it safe to say that Cyrus was your directorial debut?
No, that's also Cyrus is also another film that is in development. We have a few. We have about 6 in development right now, 6 feature films. So again, when you talk about opportunity, there's a lot of opportunity with us here right now. So it wouldn't be that. I have done some directing on some other projects. I've been more on the producing side of everything. However, I did want to take this approach because for me, I'm involved in the writing of a lot of the stories that we are producing. And on my side, when I can visually see it, the project or the film, it's a little bit easier for me to execute that vision than it would be to bring somebody on and say, hey, this is how I want the film carried out. I've been through so many scenarios where we've hired directors to create a product, and you know, what's delivered isn't necessarily what you're expecting, and you can call that maybe, and there may be a lot of reasons for it. There could have been a lack of communication between a lot of the parties, or, I mean, there's so many scenarios for it. But because of the next few projects we have are very important to me, and not just important to me, but also important in the grand scheme of things in terms of where our company's going with our film products. And because I'm a little bit of a micromanager at the same time, I decided to kind of take on 2 roles because for me, executing it, I know exactly how it needs to be executed. And in my perspective, I believe we can move a little bit more efficiently with me taking on that role in a few of the films that we have upcoming.
Right. Were there, or let's talk about like the pressures from your first directorial debut. What kind of pressures did you experience?
Pressure, people that know me, they consider me, and I also consider myself, a very nonchalant person. So I'm not going to move to the left or to the right very easily. I stay pretty calm in a lot of different scenarios. In directing this particular film, what was important to me is how I was going to communicate with the actors, and communicating the vision to them, right? And what you're wanting to see. And the other scenario too is the actors have to have some trust in you as well, right? And vice versa. It's a little bit easier to trust a lot of actors who are established, but coming out of the gates, sometimes they need to trust the directors too, right? Because the actors are a little bit limited in what they can see. What they know is what they're being presented with on paper and what they need to get executed with. Sometimes they don't know the entire vision of the film, and a lot of times they don't know what it's going to look like when it gets done, and they don't know if the director is going to get the best possible scenes from them to make them look good, right? Because a lot of them are judged by what they did last. They could have a string of great performances and one major bomb, and they're being judged by the last thing. So there has to be a lot of trust on their side with the director too. So when you ask more about pressure in coming out of the gates like this, I wouldn't necessarily call it pressure, but I'd say one of the more sensitive aspects of it is that relationship and building that trust with the talent, and that talent having a trust in you that you can actually direct them in a manner that's most conducive to them, making them look good, right? While still achieving your objective of creating this film and this project and all of those things. Because, let's be honest, they want to be recognized too for their work. And I'm sure all of them would love to be nominated for all the awards, right? But that's only going to happen if that relationship with the director and the actor is there and it's on point. So that's where I would say more of the sensitivity comes in. And if there would be any pressure, it might be there. But again, we've had a lot of opportunity to prepare, and I'm very confident that we'll hit it out of the park with that.
Nice. Are there any pressures that you deal with today?
On the producing side, there's demands from other organizations that are involved in the film project. And I'm just being a little bit careful, but again, when there's unions involved, there's a lot of demands, right? Things need to be done a certain way. Things need to be handled a certain way. And if they're not handled a certain way, there are consequences that could be detrimental to the entire production, right? So handling that, one has to be very mindful. And for the most part, when you talk about pressure, if I had to define something as pressure, that might be the more pressing issue, that we would be having today, right? And that we've been having for the past, couple of months here. But again, that's with the case in any industry. When you have labor or you're hiring people and you're dealing with unions, there are ways things need to be done, and there are pressures bestowed on a lot of companies and employers to do things a certain way. So it's not necessarily just the case with us or me in this particular production. I think it's all across the board everywhere. You know?
Nice. What have you learned between, and I know this can be a very broad question, but what have you learned between now and then, between your first attempt at directing and now with Excelsis in pre-production?
I'd say number one is preparedness. Preparedness is everything. And honestly, it's better to have time to prepare and be ready for when the day comes than to jump into things unprepared or half prepared or 3/4 prepared, because ultimately, if you're not 100% prepared, and I know people can make an argument saying, well, we've done things and we just, boom, snapped our fingers and went at it and we created this and it was great. And the one thing I've challenged people who have told me this, because there's a lot of great musicians out there. There's a lot of great creative artists, great filmmakers. I've seen probably films that could win Oscar awards, and I mean, they were so well done. The stories, the cinematographies, they could win all the awards, but yet nobody knows about it. Nobody's seen it. And that also comes from a lack of preparedness, right? Just because you've created something great, but then you weren't really prepared for what happens after. You know what I mean? So when you ask the biggest thing that I've taken away from things, it's preparedness, right? And just being prepared for the opportunities, being prepared for the day, being prepared as much as possible for whatever could happen, right? And it just makes things a lot easier when that time comes to execute or for whatever's going on. So I think for me, I put a lot of emphasis on preparedness. And a lot of times I've seen opportunities presented to people and they're not prepared for it. Versus you could be prepared for it, and when it is presented, it's easy to take full advantage of it. That's the biggest takeaway I could tell you. And it's something that I can take and apply to every area of life. Preparedness, just being prepared as much as possible. And if you look at Excelsis, I believe we are prepared as much as possible. We might be maybe at 97% preparedness, right? And maybe we don't get to 100% because you can only be so much prepared, but we are prepared as much as possible. And not just for what we're going to do, but for a lot of scenarios that could develop while we're shooting, after we finish the film, after the film's delivered, after the film's released, all these types of things, right? So that would be the biggest takeaway I could tell you that translates into every other area of life,
Right. Okay. So what if you were to watch a movie by someone else that you highly, and I put a very emphasis on highly, disliked? Would you still consider that to be someone's art, even if it was like totally trash, like the performance was just awful, like they should have never crawled out of the bed and even, thought about that performance? Would you still consider that art?
Well, I suppose we need to really look at what art is. I personally think everybody's capable of creating their own masterpiece, their own Picasso, work of art type scenario. And I have seen some people I do admire create work that look like you pretty much, like you said, woke up out of bed, threw something against the wall, and called it a day, right? But in that scenario, sometimes you got to wonder, is it art? Because a lot of the art, whether people like it or not, in my opinion, I think it comes from somewhere deep inside. It's not just something you wake up in the morning and, like I said, you just throw something against the wall and whatever and call it a day. Most people that are creating something, they take a lot of pride in it. It's very important to them. There's usually a lot of passion involved in it. And it's something that's deep into or it's coming from somewhere deep from the core of who they are. So if there's somebody maybe I don't admire or don't like, and they create something that's just masterful, of course, you always give credit where credit is due. But if there's somebody, whether I admire them or don't admire them, and they attempted to do something but maybe just fell short, I still think you got to give credit where credit is due. But when there's really no heart in it, or there's no attention to it, and there was no passion in it, and there was no love in it, call it like that, then I'm going to question whether it was art or not, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So
I like that answer. That was very honest. I've asked this question maybe 2 times, and you get the typical where you want to please everybody. You don't want to come off as being negative. But if you like something, you like something. If you don't, you don't. I don't believe in sugarcoating like your definition of things. So thank you for a very honest answer.
Yeah, and like I said, when anybody who puts an effort towards anything, and if they just happen to fall short because, hey, sometimes when you first try something, maybe you do fall short, but you know how to do it better the second time, right? That's fine. It's just when something is devoid of, I think, all the elements that creates art, that's when, again, you have to question it, right? Is it art or not?
Okay. What message do you think people will take away from Excelsius?
I know we touched on this earlier, but what I really wanted to highlight is that same fact. Like, look, if you want to get to where you got to go, you got to knock out that voice in your head telling you no. No, can't happen. It's not going to work. No. It's that voice that keeps saying no. What are you thinking about? And then you have to muster up a lot of energy just to counter it. So what I'm hoping they come out of it with is stop taking a lot of energy just to counter that voice with another voice in your head. Just knock it out. You know what I mean? Just knock it out. And because that's the only thing. And I know a lot of times people like to point fingers at maybe other people or scenarios or circumstances and kind of use those things as reasons why something can't happen, or they can't do something, or they can't, whatever the case may be. But that old saying, every time you point one finger at someone, there's 4 of them pointing back at you. And ultimately, that's where we're trying to take people in thought. Don't try to drown out the voice with another voice. Just knock it out. Just completely KO it, And it is possible. It's just sometimes I don't know how aware we are that this battle is actually happening in the mind, right?
Right.
But that's where we want to take people at the end. No matter what, we've got our backdrop with women's MMA, and that's great. And we have a heck of a storyline in terms of what's going on with the characters and how they were getting to the point that they got to. And I think we're going to have probably some really unique cinematography you're going to see in this film. even some things you don't see in some of the higher budget tentpole films. And I'm really excited for that. And I think our music score is going to be just phenomenal. But ultimately, no matter what, at the end of the day, that's what I'm hoping they take from the film. There is one opponent, and it's not who you're pointing your finger at. It's the four pointing back at you. And if you can knock out that voice, right, you got a good shot of getting to where you got to go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, indeed. So are you confident you got a movie here that inspires and entertains?
I am definitely confident that we have a great film, and a great film product that can definitely inspire a lot of people, that can appeal to a large audience base, and that can really have an impact in our pop culture. Like a film, you can kind of look back and say, yeah, I kind of remember that one. That was kind of the beginning of whatever the movement ends up being, right? And like I said, we have been getting a lot of attention, and I do believe we'll continue that, especially with a few of the things that we have in store once the film's finished. But definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, I do believe with everything we have planned for this, and I mean, I've touched on the cinematography, I've touched on the music score, the type of acting. This one will definitely deliver, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely deliver, and I can say that without any hesitation.
Okay. All right, websites, my friend, we better get those from you so the people know where to find you online.
Yeah, best thing to do is just to go ahead. I mean, you can follow the film on all the social media platforms. Basically, it's at Excelsius Movie. That's EXCELSIS Movie. Website is basically excelsis-movie.com. So very, very easy to find. And the best thing to do is just to follow the film on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and just kind of stay on point for all the developments, news, happenings, everything. You can also find a little bit of a teaser on YouTube right now, which is also at Excelsius Movie on YouTube. So not difficult to find. We're all over the web. A lot of great things are happening, so I tell everybody listening to just follow the film, stay plugged in, and yeah.
Nice. Okay. What's your favorite way to connect with fans through social media? Are you online often and accessible to the average fan or even collaborator looking to reach out? Now, I could not find any personal contacts or way to personally contact you. It was all business. Is that the way you engineered it?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, people can find me as well at jaze-bordeaux.com on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. They can even send me an email it's basically jaze@jaze-bordeaux.com. That's also on my website, jaze-bordeaux.com. And so I'm pretty accessible by email or direct messages. They're all activated, so those who want to reach out, collaborate, or just for a word or anything, they can find me online as well.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate your time, Mr. Bordeaux, and we'll be watching and anticipating the project release date of Excelsius. Definitely appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Dini. Fantastic. It was just great talking to you today. And I tell you one thing, you did ask a few questions today that I don't know if anybody's ever asked me before. So I really, really appreciated that and had a lot of fun with you this afternoon.
Oh, no doubt, man. We try to dive in deep, man.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was great. So thank you so much for that. And thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Have a good day.
Okay.